My name's Ben and I like stunts. I'm here to review The Fall Guy. So hey, check out my thoughts on this channel. My name's Ben Friedman and today I am reviewing The Fall Guy starring the one and only movie star Ryan Gosling. If you cannot tell by my intro, I am a huge Ryan Gosling fan and I want to like this movie going in because this is everything that I've been wanting Hollywood to make movies about. This is an original action movie, or I should say it is technically based on a 1980s TV series. I didn't know that before walking in. I thought this was a completely original concept. So as original as Hollywood gets these days, this follows a stunt guy who has to go searching for the man that he does stunts for. After he goes missing on a film set, he has to go searching for this guy. And along the way, mischief ensues. And this co-stars Emily Blunt. She plays the director that the stuntman has a crush on and that they have this relationship. And he's trying to prove that if he can help save her movie, if he can help get her first movie off the ground with these incredible stunts and doing everything, that he can win her back. I should just say that the stunt man is named Colt, played by Ryan Gosling. This film also stars Emily Blunt, as I mentioned. Aaron Taylor Johnson is the actor that goes missing. Winston Duke is in here. You got Hannah Waddingham from Ted Lasso. She's in here as a producer. You have Teresa Palmer and you have Stephanie Sue from Everything Everywhere All at Once, all in this movie. And this premise was a lot of fun going into it, and I was curious to see how it was going to do. This is David Leitch, a director I know some people are very unkind about. They're not the biggest David Leitch fans. I will completely admit that I've liked most of his movies and like what he brings to them. I think Bullet Train a few years ago was a ton of fun. I liked Hobbs and Shaw. I've just generally liked what I've seen from this guy. With this premise, this being like almost an homage to stunts and Hollywood and filmmaking, I was pretty into wanting to like this movie and having positive feelings going into it. And so when I sat down for really what is the first summer blockbuster of the year, I felt like really excited. I was really getting amped and I was hearing great things out of CinemaCon. And then I sat down and I watched this movie, The Fall Guy. And I have to report that I had a great time watching The Fall Guy. The Fall Guy is a really fun movie, and that's really just due to one actor and one actor alone, who anytime that this film starts to derail itself or gets lost in script or just goes a little bit too long, Ryan Gosling, as the true movie star he is, takes command of the screen and just does wonders with it. I mean, Ryan Gosling has always been very funny, whether you've seen him in romantic comedies like Crazy Stupid Love, whether you've seen what he can do in pure comedies like The Nice Guys or his role last year, which he got nominated for an Oscar for, Ken. He just has a certain chops comedically to pull off certain type of humor, and The Fall Guy uses him very well. He is very funny in this movie, and it's someone who is such a physically gifted comedic actor, as we saw in movies like the Nice Guys, where he's essentially doing pratfalls and yelling the entire movie. He brings those sensibilities here. He's a little bit more toned down, in fact, even a lot more toned down than his characters from the Nice Guys, but he plays that same physical comedy very well in this movie about a stuntman who keeps getting hit left and right, and always getting back up. This is a script by Drew Pearce, a screenwriter that I've liked. He has done such works on the Mission Impossible film. He did a film a few years ago called Hotel Artemis. He worked on Iron Man 3, Hobbs and Shaw. I've generally liked his stories. This film is a really good premise for a film. Essentially, that after the stunt guy has an accident and goes away 18 months. He kind of shuts himself on the world. He gets called back to work on this set with his ex-fling, his ex-girlfriend, however you want to say. They're not really official, but they always felt like they were about to be official. And this mystery ensues of finding this actor that went missing and the surprises that come with it. So it's got this action. It's got the comedy. This is far more comedic than action. However, it does have some really fun action going on Some of the action set pieces go on a little bit too long. I did notice myself starting to lose interest. But when I started noticing myself losing interest, the film cuts to another joke or another set piece and really just keeps the momentum going. This film does feel a little bit too long at 126 minutes, making it right over 2 hours. However, I had a really fun time watching it. So while it did feel a little long, I can't really say that I needed anything out of this film because it's just so effortlessly charismatic between Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt. Emily Blunt, who I haven't talked about enough in this review, she does a really good job in this film as the director. She's just there for the chaos. She's there for the fun, and she's really embracing this role. I thought Ryan Gosling and her had really good chemistry throughout. And yeah, just watching this movie, there's a lot of fun. I do want to get into some criticisms of this film because as much as I enjoyed watching this film, there are certainly a few criticisms I had about The Fall Guy. The biggest is probably actually sadly focused towards the action. David Leitch is, like I said, I've generally liked his direction. I've generally liked his films. There is something a little, I don't want to say cheap about the way his action set pieces look. There is something a little hollow about them, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just a little bit too much use of humor. There seems to be a little bit of gravity missing from some of the action set pieces, and they feel a little light. They just don't always look incredible. There are certain set pieces in this movie that I think really work well. I think the third action set piece is a ton of fun. And you see David Leitch, who has this background in stunts, really bringing that knowledge into this. While I like the execution of a handful of the stunt scenes, I can't say all of them looked incredible. There were a few that I noticed that felt a little static and flat to me, which was disappointing in this movie that is a love letter to stunts. That I definitely certainly felt some of them felt a little, if not overly CGI'd. I don't know what it was, but there was a lack of gravity towards them, and thus I felt myself kind of waning in interest in some of these moments. I think that's far and few between in this movie. I actually really liked how this movie looks generally. I liked the aesthetic of it. I liked the humor of it. And there's certainly enough in The Fall Guy to recommend. Even if I did have some issues with some of the way that this film was shot, I still think David Leitch has a lot more to grow as a filmmaker. And I do really also think that he can be a really great action filmmaker. There is just this, sometimes the humor does overpower his action, and I want to see him maybe return to something more similar to an Atomic Blonde, where it's far more serious. But in The Fall Guy, I didn't need it to be serious. I should just kind of state that. I thought the tone of this movie worked really well. And this is kind of that hard figuring out if this was Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt making this film work well, or if this is David Leitch kind of learning some of the lessons of his other films that maybe weren't always the most successful. I think Ryan Gosling is probably one of the better actors he's gotten to front as a lead man in it, though. I mean, that's actually hard to say because I know he just worked with Brad Pitt, and obviously he worked with Charlize Theron for Atomic Blonde. So he's worked with the really good actors throughout. But yeah, everything about this movie, I had a really good time. I can highly recommend this, especially as a date movie. My girlfriend and I went to see this movie for the early screening. We both laughed. We both had a really good time. It's a very sweet film. It has humor that I think everyone can enjoy. There's a really funny needle drop in this movie where Ryan Gosling is just killing it as a comedian. Like I said, this movie had me laughing hard throughout it. And I mean, like, actually genuinely laughing. And maybe it's just because I find Ryan Gosling so funny. I find him so effortlessly charismatic. But there is a lot to recommend in this movie. I hope people go see The Fall Guy because this isn't your typical blockbuster coming out every summer. This one has a little bit more heart. I think the stunt work is pretty impressive throughout. And there's just a lot to recommend and feel good about this movie. And like I said, even if it's not a directly original script, I don't think most people are knowing of the reference of The Fall Guy, this 1980s TV show. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people are going to be yelling at me in the comments in a second about that. But it feels original enough in the sense that it's just not something, it's not the usual superhero. It's not the usual dinosaurs, all those movies that we see every summer. This one felt a little bit more unique in its approach. and I can really recommend it. And I really hope this does well because I'd like to see a sequel. I'd like to see Ryan Gosling keep doing roles like this. This does seem to be the trajectory that Ryan Gosling has taken his career on. He said that he himself wants to focus on lighter roles because now as a father, he doesn't want to be carrying some of the dark and broody stuff that he was doing early in his career and bring it into the house while he's trying to raise his kids. Respect that sentiment. Obviously, I'm going to miss some of the darker, moodier roles that Ryan Gosling does. I hope he can dabble in them still occasionally. But if we are just in the full Ryan Gosling comedy star era, making some of this quality of movies throughout, if we get Ken every summer and we get the Fall Guy every summer, and this is the type of leading man performance that Ryan Gosling can deliver, I'm so in, and I really can't wait to see more of this. And yeah, I can really recommend The Fall Guy. I had a great time with this movie, and I think a lot of people are really going to like this movie. I think it is a perfect date movie. I think it's a perfect romance comedy, action comedy. It really does blend that genre very well, and there's a lot to love, especially for people who love stunts in Hollywood, love the history of it. To some degree, it does feel like the Universal tour at Universal Studios, where you're just kind of going through the history of Hollywood. There's a lot of references. I found it all delightful in this movie, and I had a great time. The Fall Guy is getting, on a scale of 5 stars, I'm going 3.5 out of 5 stars for The Fall Guy.